We're living in a very, this is not normal. Our life is not normal. We're living in Hashem's world, and things take place here that could not take place in the world the way we would imagine it to be. And it's not something relegated to a realm of folklore. We say, well, every nation has its folklore. This is not folklore. This is Chumash Rashi. Chumash Rashi is Mount Sinai. Okay. So he ran to Ethiopia, and he found, it's going to be the whole class. If I tell you this story, it's going to be the whole class. I better not do it. Okay. He found a nation outside of its own city-state. Nations were cities in those days. The king of Ethiopia had been off fighting some war. In the meantime, there was a revolution. They told him, we don't want you back. And they dug a moat around the city, and they filled it with lethal snakes, so nobody could break in. And there was a king with an army, no food, and he can't get into his own city. Comes along Moshe, brilliant young man. He says, I got an idea for you. He finds the situation. He says, I have an idea for you. Let each one of your soldiers go into the woods and find himself a crane, a bird with long, skinny legs and a beak. They like snakes. Everybody should capture at least one crane. Like they bring the babies in the pictures. The crane with the baby in its bin. Starve the bird for 3 days. Then let them loose. The birds went and ate up all the snakes. The king of Cush was able to attack his own city and break in and regain his kingship. And Moshe was his top advisor, 13-year-old Moshe. Eventually, the king of Ethiopia died, and they said, who could be better to rule over us than you? And then Moshe became a king of Cush. Cush is Ethiopia, south of Egypt. And he was a king for 40 years in Ethiopia. I mean, how did he get to be the age of 80? He was 13 when he ran away from Egypt. They wanted to kill him. He comes back, he's 80 years old. What happened? So what happened was that at the age of 53, I guess, around that, they wanted a king. It's not a king if he's not married. Moshe, we love you. We want you to get married. And who could be better to be your queen than the former queen? Let her be marry her. No, he knew he was Jewish. He didn't want to marry out. He said, I can't do it. He abdicated the throne. And I'm going to say a bracha. So he ran away. He left. He went wandering. And he said, where should I go? Good morning, Shiril. And he knew that his ancestor, Yaakov, found his beshert at a well, and his father Yitzchak found his beshert at a well. Actually, it was Eliezer did it for him. He found Rivka at the well, drawing water. So he went to the well. Where's the well? So Moshe went to the well, and what did he find? He found some girls there, some maidens, who were the daughters of Yisrael. And they were getting beaten up by the Goyish shepherds. Why were they being beaten up? Because Yisrael had been excommunicated. Why was it excommunicated? Because Pharaoh had 3 advisors. One of them was Yisrael. One of them was Job. One of them was Bilam the wicked. So Pharaoh had a problem. The Jewish people are multiplying 6 at a shot. Everybody's having 6 babies at one time. Can you imagine Leah having 5 sisters called Leah? Leah 1, Leah 2, Stephanie. Can you imagine 6 Stephanies in your family? Be a lot of fun. How do we know this? Because the beginning, the opening chapters of Shmos describe what's happening with the Jewish people, and it says 6 times that they were having a lot of children. Rashi explains this because everybody was having 6 kids at a shot, and that's how the Jewish people grew from 70 souls to be millions in a few hundred years, 200 years. We came in 70 number, and we went out 600,000 men, plus wives, plus children, plus elders, over the age of 600, over the age of 20, over the age of 50. Came out a few million people. How'd that happen? So Pharaoh says, this is getting out of hand. Out of hand. Hello. Shana.
Yeah.
This is the student with the beautiful name. Shana, no. Okay. So it's getting out of hand. What are we going to do? So we called in his advisors, and the advisors said, Bilam was an anti-Semite, a vicious anti-Semite. His whole happiness in life was to curse the Jews. And later on, during the summer, we're going to read about how he did curse the Jews and how Hashem changed all his curses into blessings. So he said, since we know in the stars that the Redeemer of the Jewish people is being born now, take all the newborn children and throw them give them to your God, the Nile, throw them in the Nile, and then you won't have a problem. Wow, great idea, says Pharaoh. Yisro says, not a good idea. Yisro was a philosopher. Yisro was a wise person. He knew the history. He said, listen, your whole power in Egypt comes from a blessing that you got from a Jew. You're going to repay that blessing by throwing his grandchildren in the Nile? That doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. Won't work. Pharaoh didn't like to hear that. So Yisro had to run away. He had to save his life. Had to scat. Had to leave. But he took one thing with him. One thing he took. How much could he carry after all? Yaakov Avinu had brought down to Egypt a special staff. I don't mean secretaries. I mean a stick. And it was a stick made out of maybe sapphire, something that sounds like sapphire, sanpirion, it's called, sanpirion. And on this staff, there was written all kinds of things that he could not read. Couldn't read it. All kinds of things. He took it with him because it was a miraculous staff. Good morning, Yael. And he took it with him, and he took it back to his home, which was in Midian, and he stuck it into the garden, stuck it into the ground, and it took root. No one could pull it out. Hence, this became the source, I would suggest, of the Excalibur story in English mythology of King Arthur's magical sword that no one could pull out, the sword in the stone. Nobody could pull this staff out. So he said, anybody pulls the staff out, he can marry my daughter. That's what he said. But nobody could. So now Moshe comes to Midian, and he finds the girls are being beaten up by the shepherds, and he is a hero kind of guy. He chases the shepherds away. He saves the girls. And they come home, and his father said, what happened to you today? So they tell them, this Egyptian man came and saved us. And he helped us to water the flocks. The water came up when he went near. It was amazing. He said, and you left him by the well? What's with you? I thought you were educated girls. I thought you were smart. Why didn't you bring him home? Maybe he'd marry one of you. Yisro was no fool. He knew this was a special person. So they went back, they got Moshe. They brought him, and Yisro said, I want you for my son-in-law. He saw. Yisro recognized he was a Jew. He was from the family of Yaakov Avinu. and he took him to be his son-in-law. And one day he was wandering in the garden. He saw this staff, and it was beautiful, and there was writing on it, and he could read it because he went to Cheder in Egypt. His mother taught him Aleph Beis. And what was written on it? The 10 Commandments, the 10 plagues, and the Aleph Beis, and all kinds of stuff. And he said he wanted to look at it carefully. He pulled it out. Huh? That clinched the shidduch. And so he married Yocheved. Okay, so that was Yisrei. So Yisrei now, why was Yisrei, why were the shepherds beating up his daughters? Because Yisrei had been excommunicated, because when he returned to Midian, he had time to himself, because until then he was a big guru. Everybody was coming to him for advice. Now nobody wanted to have anything to do with him, because through his researches, he realized that he was looking for the source of all blessings. And he tried every single thing that there was out there, he tried it. Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam, whatever was around those days, all the idol worships. And he saw that they were all a lot of hot air. And he renounced idol worship in total. Midian was an idol worshiping nation. And he was telling them that it's all full of hot air, it's all baloney. How can you worship something that you yourself made last week? And it's going to be your source of blessing. So maybe they would rationalize it and say, well, we don't really worship it, but it reminds us of the God that we worship. But that's what leads to Avodah Zarah. First, you make an image that reminds you of the God, and then you worship the image. That's how it happens. That's how idol worship got entrenched in this consciousness of mankind. And to our great sorrow, even the Jewish people fell for it in Egypt, and later in history too. Until the sages abolished it. The sages, when the temple was destroyed, the sages abolished the power of idol worship. And they said if any normal person had been alive in those days before it was abolished, no one would have been able to withstand the force, the power of the influence of everybody worshiping idols. How could you stand alone against it? And that's what Yisrei did. So therefore they hated him. They hated him, just like they hate the Jews, because we stand against it to the present day. So that was Yisrei. What happened? What did Job do? Job said, I'm not getting involved. He kept quiet. He didn't want to risk the Pharaoh would take vengeance on him too, chase him away, maybe kill him. He said, I'm not getting involved. He didn't say anything. Because he didn't say anything, that is the reason that Job suffered the famous 70 years of suffering. And all his good friends came to him and said, what did you do? What sin did you do? He said, I didn't do any sin. He was a wise man. He was a righteous man. He was a righteous, non-Jewish man. Believed in God. But he kept quiet. Okay. So that is the scenario. And now the Jewish people came out of Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea. They had a fight with Amalek who was related to Bilam, one of his relatives, one of his close relatives. And they prevailed. And so Yisrei says, aha, now that's it. I have to go to them. Now I have to go to them. And Yisrei journeys to Moshe to convert, to take upon himself formally to be a follower of Moshe Rabbeinu. His son-in-law. Yes, dear.
Did Eob also become Jewish or no?
Who?
Eob.
No.
No?
He didn't become Jewish. No, he was a righteous non-Jew.
Oh.
He believed in God. He kept the mitzvahs that were given to all mankind. Some say, there are different, I'll tell you, there are different versions in the Talmud. Some say that there was no Job. It's just an allegory. The others say, no, he really was a human being, and this the story really is real the way it says it. There's different versions of the story of Eov. But he died just before the Jews came into Eretz Yisrael. He was like the tzaddik, giving life to everybody who was living in the Holy Land. It was through his merit. It's a very, very good question. And the Talmud does not resolve the issue. They say, some say this and some say that. And when some say this and some say that, so then there's a general rule that this and that, they're both the words of the living God. And the Sephardic Jews have a way of living quite happily with both of these things together. It doesn't bother them. It doesn't bother them that there's a contradiction. This is true, but this is also true. You know, like two people are arguing, and the wise man comes along and they ask for the silly argument. He says, well, first of all, what's your point? He says, I think that's right. The other one says, well, you didn't even hear my point of view yet. Okay, so let me hear your point of view. He tells him his point of view and says, I think that's right. Two. A third person comes along and says, how can they both be right? He says, you're also right. So now Yisro comes to Moshe. So now we get back to the original question that I asked. Who was Yisro? And to understand this, we have to go back to the very first chapters of Bereshis. What was the first crime that happened? Was Adam and Chava ate from the forbidden fruit. And then they were banished from the garden. And then they had children, two children, Cain and Hevel. And Cain and Hevel were jealous of each other. That is, Hevel was not jealous, but Cain was jealous. He wanted everything. Remember, we learned three things: the jealousy and lust, sexual passion, and honor are three things that will cause a person to commit murder and drive him from the world. Right? To satisfy your desire for sex, possessions, and honor. Terrible, terrible temptations that Hashem put in the world. We have to fight against them. If you feel any of these things, beware, run away. Run, pick up your coattails and run. Okay, so Cain was terribly jealous of Hevel. Hashem cursed the earth because Adam and Chava ate from the fruit. So therefore, Hevel, being a righteous person, stayed away from agriculture. And he raised sheep. He became very strong. Raised sheep. Carrying sheep around the whole time, you get to be mucho strong. He became very strong. And Cain raised flax. Cain became a farmer, and his chief crop was very expensive, linen. Flax makes for linen. But he was not as strong as Hevel. And we don't know what they fought about. Could be they fought about over who's going to inherit the whole world when their parents die. But Cain started a fight. And he lost. He lost the fight. But then he got up and he attacked Hevel by surprise and killed him. Mamish killed him. And Hashem said, what is this? He says, where is Hevel? And Cain said the famous words, am I my brother's keeper? I should know. I should know. And so the history of mankind unfolded, and one bad thing led to another, like we learned in the beginning of Basi Lagani. One with the Chet Eitz Hadas, with the fruit, and then came the murder, and each time the Shekhinah went away and went away and went away and went away until arose a light in the darkness and corruption and confusion, and began to teach people that there was one invisible God, and he's the one who makes the garden. And he wants to be in the bridal chamber together with his bride, which is the Jewish people. That's what we learned, Basi Lagani, right? We learned it. So what happened to Cain and Hevel? What happened to their life? They were created by Adam and Chava, first people. So it had to be fixed. This terrible crime of murder, the first murder in the history of mankind, had to be fixed. So Cain had to come back. Had to come back to fix up the mistake. I'll give you one guess. Who did Cain, the villain, come back as? One guess. What? No. Well, you don't get another guess. Try again. Yisroi, the high priest of idol worship. Cain came back as a supreme guru idol worshiper. Bigger than the Pope. Bigger than the Dali Dilly, whatever they are. Yeah. Bigger than all the gurus. He knew everything about idol worship. Bigger than the biggest Buddha. And he renounced the whole thing and decided that there's only one God, and that's the God of the Hebrews. Our Zedas, the God of our Zeda. This is who we are. This is our family. And so he goes to Moshe. Who was Moshe? If Yisroi was Cain, who was Moshe? Hevel. And so when Yisroi comes to Moshe to become a believer, a card-carrying believer in the God of Israel, the sin was fixed. The world was brought back to its original state. Basi Lagani. I came back into the garden that was created, that I created to be together with the Jewish people. Now there should be music, and there should be parades, and there should be everything. The world was fixed. And then Hashem said, now I can give the Torah to mankind. And so in this week's Parsha that is named after Yisroi, we have the 10 Commandments, Mount Sinai, this week. How do you like them apples? Isn't that amazing? Who could put together such a scenario? Only God. Whoever could put that scenario together, I'm for him. I'm one of his. I want to be one of his people. Okay, chapter 20. And Hashem should watch over all of our people wherever they are. Lam Natseya Mizra David, chapter 20 in Tehillim. Yancha Bim Tzare Sagev Hashem Elohei Yankev. Isha Nezaham Kaidesh Umitziye Sadeka. Isker Kol Michasech Velasun Dashna Selam. Iten the Chachel Vavecha, Hashem should grant all your requests. V'chol Atzatzach Yamale. The run of B'Shuvasechu B'Shem Eloheinu Nidgel Yamale Adonai Kol Mishalei Secha. Hashem should enable you to fulfill all of your good resolutions, and this will bring our Yeshua, our redemption. Atayadaiti says King David, now I know, Ki Heshia Adonai Mashiach, Hashem saves his anointed one, his prince, his king. Ya'anehu Mishmei Kodshe, saves him, answers him from his highest heavens. B'gevures with might, Yesha, salvation, Yamine from his right hand. They come with chariots, they come with tanks, they come with drones, they come with missiles, they come with cavalry. We come with the name of God on our lips, but we have an iron dome. Hey, Makaru Benafalu, how did we invent an iron dome? God gave us brilliant people. He planted brilliance in the minds of his children. They fell and they didn't get up. They stumbled and fell on. We stood up and we're standing strong, stalwart. Is there Tanya on the table? We have to learn a line of Tanya, one line. So that's it. You can share that thought at your Shabbos table tonight, Friday night. You know, girls, you heard that there's a decree. There's a gesera that there's no school from Wednesday till Tuesday. We have to protest. So the question before us in chapter 8 is what happens if a person does something that's absolutely forbidden? The food is tied down, and even if he tries to do mitzvahs with the energy from that food, the energy from the food will not be included in the benefit from that food. In other words, the letters of Torah, a person eats, has a cheeseburger for lunch, and then goes, learns a Perek Tanya, the energy and the holiness and the letters of the Tanya will not go up into a holy place. It will remain tied down in the darkness and corruption of the klippas. So therefore, the only answer is to do tshuva. What is tshuva? We learned there's steps of tshuva. Step number 1 is you realize you made a mistake. People don't like to realize that they made mistakes. Nobody likes to do that. And then you have to feel regret. You have to admit the mistake, actually verbally say it. You have to say it. I made a mistake. I did something wrong. And then if you verbalize it, then you can make a good, strong decision in your heart that you won't do it again. From now on, you're going to take steps to make sure that you do not get on a subway train after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Friday, or after 2 o'clock, leave yourself plenty of time to get home and prepare for Shabbos. Not leave things to the very last minute, no matter how attractive the white sail may be. And then you carry out your resolution, and that's called doing tshuva. And you keep on. As long as you keep on, then you have an advantage over people who never did the transgression in the first place, because they're not motivated so strong. Follow? The acoustics in this room are very poor, so I don't know. I hope you're hearing every word clearly. I try to speak clearly. So, because otherwise the energy is held captive, page 128, in the power of the Sitra Achra, which is the 3 unclean klippas. And it stays there. And the Rebbe writes in a note that when the Yetzer Hara tricks a person, seduces him or her into doing things wrong, they get a hold on them. They don't let go. The person becomes trapped. You know, the famous scene in different pieces of literature where a person wants to do tshuva, and he laments that he's trying to do tshuva, but he feels that it's just superficiality. His words mount up, but his soul remains tied down below. You see it in Shakespeare and Marlowe and different personified in different places. It's a very profound idea that if you do something wrong, you get stuck with your wrong thing, and you may be going through the motions of becoming better, but you don't really become better. So what's the hope? So the Rebbe says that sometimes the Yetzer Hara will release one of these captive hostage neshamas. we'll release them, let them back into the world, and they will be born into a non-religious, non-observant family, and they will do they'll make a lot of other people sinners, make a lot of other people mess up, make a lot of other failures, make a whole new generation of failures. And this is one of the things that we find that the Rebbeim sometimes do, like the famous story from Basi Lagani about the Rebbe Maharash who took a week out of his very short life to go to France to save a soul of a young aristocrat who was with women and wine and everything and doing all kinds of forbidden things. And his soul had been released. The Rebbe Maharash said it was such a holy neshama, had not been in the world for hundreds of years. And it had been released from hostage, from captivity, in order to do a lot of damage in the world. And the Rebbe Maharash stopped what he was doing, and he traveled to France and checked into the hotel and went to the casino and encountered this young man and said words to him that shook him to his heart. And eventually he became a Baal Tshuva. And he said, why didn't you send somebody else? He says, because nobody else would have been able to schlep him out of the cliff. The cliff had such a strong hold on him. And the Rebbe gives this as an example of the tremendous Ahavas Yisrael of the Rebbeim for the Jewish people. And we learn from this that tremendous Ahavas Yisrael is for us too. And if need be, the Rebbe will himself go out of his way to help us. And he does. We learn from it. And that's the first mimer the Rebbe said. He tells that story. So that's the power of tshuva, to actually retroactively turn absolute bad into absolute good, into better than good. Better than good. Because the person who's just good doesn't know about that stuff. Wouldn't even know the address. Okay. We will continue with chapter 8, Bezos Hashem, tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then the Gezerah sets in. We can't learn. No more classes for a week. L'chaim. How was Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Shvat?
Yeah.
Well, more to come. Tu B'Shvat is coming Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday is Tu B'Shvat, right? And then another week later is the Rebbitzin, the art site, Yom Hilul of the Rebbitzin. We're here to help. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is the Rebbe, the Rebbeim are here to help the whole Jewish people. And if we can have some tiny part of what they do, it's pure profit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei nefashos rabos v'chesronon, al kol masha barasa la'hayis b'hem nefesh kol hay baruch chei ha'elohim. So reach out to your friends, your girlfriends, your schoolmates, the girls you grew up with, and tell them about learning Tanya. Tell them about this wonderful school that we have. The best school in the world. Thank you. That's very sweet.
The school can't go on without teachers. Yeah.
Hopefully, you're going back to Toronto, so you're with your friends.
After Zoom. Okay. No, I can't. Why? Good, good, good.